Among the most useful concepts to arise from the Industry 4.0 movement is that of the digital twin and its life cycle counterpart, the digital thread. Effectively, a software representation of a particular physical asset, the digital twin is designed to optimize that asset's operation, including the detection, prediction, and prevention of adverse outcomes in the real world. Even so, what about interoperability with infrastructure? What will digital twins and threads augment or phase out? Is the return on investment worth it? To discuss this is John Wachira, Group IT Manager at the Safal Group, who will take us through putting digital twins and threads to work for you. Welcome, John.
John Wachira, Group IT Manager at Safal Group. Safal Group is a manufacturing entity that cuts across the whole of Africa, across multiple countries. And this is an open conversation around digital twins and digital threads, one of the key technologies that we've seen come into the IT space over the last couple of years. Now, I think if you all ask yourselves what is a digital twin, digital thread, sounds pretty much like rocket science, but it's a subset of what we term as smart manufacturing. Now, smart manufacturing pretty much is a concept that has evolved over time, and it implies more of a technology-driven processes within the operations, more of digital elements around production, and now digital twins come in as subset of smart manufacturing, where now we look at interconnection of devices. Now, what has happened over time and over a couple of years is new technologies have come into play. Devices have become much more interconnected. We have networks that are going into the shop floor spaces, that are going into operation, into production environments, into your PLCs and into your SCADAs. And you also have the cloud environment as well, where you have your Internet of Things sitting in there. You have cloud technologies, cloud analytics, hyperscalers that are providing cloud that is able to provide you with certain analytical tools, and therefore the advent of digital twins or digital thread. Now, when you talk of digital twins, what are we talking about? And this is the important question. Now, digital twins are simply a simulation or a replica of your physical asset or a process or a production environment. What that means is that a digital twin becomes a virtual environment. It's typically created through a 3D or a design and modeling software, and it also entails you going into that environment, probably even taking a scan or a photo of your physical environment. And what happens in the digital twin is built based on certain parameters, which I will mention going down the line. Now, it doesn't exist by itself. Once you create your model, you have a couple of factors that really come into play. A digital twin is really driven by integration. What does that mean? It means a digital twin doesn't exist by itself. It's got to communicate to an environment, an enterprise environment, for example, or multiple environments. So digital twins are critical. The integration to enterprise environments and systems are critical and important. Digital twins are also data-driven. Without consumption of data, without aggregation of data, you cannot get the results that you would like to get out of a digital twin. Now, digital twin takes into its environment realistic information, real information generated from either systems. It could be data that you have seen in the real world. It could be from machines, outputs out of systems, and you can get this through sensors and a couple of other elements that you bring on board information. And that is really critical in terms of processing and coming up with scenarios from a digital twin's perspective. Now, I won't forget to say that a digital twin has got to be built based on a use case. So the business outcomes are very critical when you're coming up with a business with a digital twin. What that means is that every scenario is different. Every organization has its own different purpose or requirements, and therefore no two digital twins really look alike. But a business outcome is extremely critical. Now, technologies such as IoTs, such as tools that enable analysis, are also really, really important. The other part of digital twins is the visualization. Now, you cannot typically have a digital twin. If you want to understand, to see the behavior, the results, then you need to have an immersive 3D view. And this is really, really important. This gives you the ability to really look out, to understand the behavior, and enable you probably to make certain decisions based on the outcome. So you've got your environment, you've got your digital twin, which is a virtual environment, simulating a specific a process or a system, and you can visualize that. Then you put an input of data into that environment and simulate that data based on certain algorithms to get a certain set of outputs. Now, that is critical, and that is what we define as a digital twin. We keep on asking ourselves about, digital twins, digital threads, why the challenges, what is the situation, what's the scenario on the ground. And I think let's understand one thing: digital twins have been a difficult thing to realize, to actualize in the environment. Yes, the technology is there, but the practical scenario is that there are certain challenges, especially interoperability challenges, that make it very difficult and reasonably difficult, that I think businesses, managers, stakeholders really need to understand when they are considering digital twins. The first part I think that is important to understand is that we, in any environment, typically will have systems that are brought in or brought on board by multiple equipment vendors. For example, if you're in a production environment, if you're in a factory environment, you've got multiple sets of equipment that have been operationalized over multiple years with multiple vendors. And to get these systems to communicate, to even standardize these systems, is a very, very difficult task. And that gives rise to one of the most difficult elements, especially where you have environments that have not been brought together, harmonized at the same time, and that is a huge challenge. The other very important part is that come with different systems, come different data formats, and these data formats, again, because we've said before, data is king as far as digital twins are concerned. And getting that data to communicate, to be able to be absorbed or consumed by a digital twin, is important to then have that information in the same format or reasonably proper format that can be consumed by a digital twin. Going beyond the data, we talk about the security, and as a security risk, anybody in the IT space will understand what this means. Exposing systems, exposing environments to other third-party tools, to analytical tools, is always a challenge. Getting data out of a system poses a risk to any environment that is sitting in an enclosed environment, and that portends a huge challenge. So, of course, we have to sit together, we have to analyze, evaluate the risk components, and ask ourselves, is it worth exposing that environment? Is it worth exposing the data? Those are decision points that are really, really critical. Beyond security comes cost. Now, cost can come in multiple ways. You need, for example, expertise. Digital twins are technologies that have come over time. But then again, we need the expertise to understand how to get these kind of systems on board. Now, we've got platforms, for example, composite platforms that enable you to connect your systems onto the cloud. Now, those, of course, come at a cost. Aggregating that data, analyzing that data also comes at a cost. So there are certain elements around cost that need to be taken into consideration when thinking about actualizing digital twins. And this is where I keep on saying, I think, eventually look at the value of rolling out your digital twin. Get a use case that really, really matters to the business and that talks to the shareholders and stakeholders. Digital twins also have a challenge as well in an environment where you have legacy systems. If you have a legacy system, you typically understand that these are not digitally aware systems. And for that reason, you've got probably to invest a bit more to either upgrade these systems or to take them to a certain level from a computing perspective where you can be able to consume information, to access the data that is sitting in there, to access the behavior. If it's a motor, it's got you want to detect vibrations out of the motor, then you got to find a sensor that can pick out that information. If, for example, the motor may not have the capability to directly connect, so legacy systems definitely pose a challenge. And in general, of course, while the technology is there, while bandwidth is coming, the cost is coming down over time, storage is coming down over time, computing power now with hyperscalers has also, the cost has dropped over time. I think the technologies are pushing us towards that direction or are enabling us to go into that direction. But definitely, we always have to ask ourselves and be aware of the challenges that are there. The other critical part, and from an organizational perspective, is the understanding of what digital twins are. And from where I see it, I consider strategy and execution very, very critical when we discuss digital twins. Having a proper use case scenario that the business understands, and probably even before getting to the use case scenario, going back and asking yourselves, do the stakeholders understand what we are talking about? It looks like a lot of IT jargon, but I think it's probably the time that we sat back and said, can we first just understand what is a digital twin, and how does it bring value to my business? We all understand that there are many competing priorities within an organization. An organization only probably looks at, how do I increase my productivity? How do I cut my costs? But then we need to place a digital twin somewhere where we can actually be able to communicate to the business and show value. Definitely takes a bit of time to create that use case kind of scenario, but I think sitting and talking the business language, understanding then how to marry the digital twin to a business process is critical. Probably to give an example, you may you're within an environment or you're within your IT space and the business is keen on, for example, investing in a new product, for example, or a new process, or it could be new machinery. And what we have seen happen in cases is where you are able to simulate the performance of a process or the performance of a product in specific scenarios. And that means, for example, you consider the specific unique constraints that you have within your work environment, within your maintenance environment, within your shop floor environment. You can simulate power outages, for example. You can simulate capacity constraint, for example. And that way you can help the business drive decisions. And for example, you can determine to what extent do you need to invest, in what location do you need to invest, in what site do you need to invest, how much do you need to invest, or is it the right time to invest, or probably you need to defer the investment. So this is a way that you can convert a technology conversation into a business conversation and really, really help the team, help the business, help your peers to make critical business decisions. Digital twins, for sure, we've come a long way as far as discussing, what really digital twins are, what is the definition, for example, of a digital twin, what are the challenges for a digital twin. But I think the sweet part is what are the benefits. And I think that there's a lot to do with benefits as far as digital twins are concerned. And I think the more we can convert, technology into action into business benefits, the more we get the acceptance. Now, for sure, and I repeat again, strategy and execution are important. Building a case is important. Determining tangible benefits, not simply benefits, but tangible benefits, is also as critical. And therefore, every business that looks at any kind of technology, including digital twins or digital threads, has got to ask themselves those fundamental questions. Now, we talked about cost as a challenge to execute or to bring on board or to adopt digital twins. What about if I said cost saving is one of the critical benefits? I've mentioned one scenario around investment. Digital twins can really help in cost saving and definitely also helping increase productivity. Those are some of the critical areas where you can get a critical return on investment. When we look at productivity, we're looking at multiple scenarios. If today you simulate a machine in a plant, you can actually probably simulate a failure, a potential failure of that plant. What you're doing then, as an IT person, you're helping, for example, your manufacturing team to be able to anticipate a failure. And what does that mean? Then they are able to rectify prior to the failure, and that eventually, of course, either reduces the downtime, increases the efficiency of the equipment over time, and multiple other factors. Productivity comes in multiple ways. It could come in reducing your downtime. It could also include the collaboration bit, the visualization on the digital twin side. Really helps teams to collaborate across functions, because they probably are able to read data from the same spot. They can understand what this product is communicating, what you're trying to get out on board, because what is happening is you're getting information, you're consuming that data, you're pushing it out into a dashboard that is understandable across the business. Now, if this can be translated by multiple functions, you get better decisions, better insights by the organization, by the team leaders. So it's really critical that we look at it from a productivity perspective, from a cost-saving perspective. And one really important part is, while you're rolling out or looking around for digital twins, ask yourself one question. When you're on the ground, what is the user story? When anyone is thinking about a solution, they've got their own personal stories. What is the motivation? What are the pain points? And when you have a clear picture of the motivation and the pain points, you can be nearly guaranteed that you'll be able to connect that to the benefits that are tangible and communicable to the person or to the individual. So that's critical. When you talk of cost savings, for example, there are situations in the life cycle of a product or life cycle of a process where we talk about, for example, a commissioning of a line. Now, a digital twin can allow you to actually commission a line virtually, see how the line behaves, understand whether the timing is right for commissioning. If you don't come across, if you work on such areas, you'll find the cost elements coming in very quickly and being able to be translated to benefits for the business. Of course, around productivity, again, we will look at degradation over time. If there's a performance degradation, you can be able to simulate that and be able to communicate down the line. So that's very important. The other part is what we call an RCA, or RCA is a root cause analysis, and a digital twin can also help you in diagnostics, getting to the bottom line to understand the root cause of issues and help you resolve those issues quickly. I think that's a very, very important part. From a decision-making perspective, as I said again, data is consumed and then there's output of information. Now, that output can be in the form of dashboard, can be in the form of analytics, and you really want to connect that or connect the output to what I call a business metric, a value metric that can actually be able to be measured and the benefits can be able to be seen. But what happens eventually is When decision making is made faster, when insights are derived out of a system, then you get true value out of an environment. And digital twins, as much as we still quite nascent in onboarding digital twins in this part of the world, we definitely have a way to go. Benefits are there. We just need to look out. We need to ask ourselves pretty hard questions, but at the same time, understand our businesses pretty well. So comes the big question, digital twins in Africa, implementation within the African continent. And to be pretty honest, it's not been as fast as we will have expected. I think we're in the early stages. It's difficult actually to come across use case scenarios, but I think this forum, I think this engagement with the experts that are sitting, with the audience that is sitting, I think we need to assimilate and try to understand where we are coming from, what are the capabilities and the opportunities at play. Right now, we have large IT players who are already, playing in that space, offering PaaS or platform as a service. You got, the Siemens in Germany, you got the Microsoft, you got the Amazon, you got the Robert Bosch in Germany, who already have very well structured and mature systems. And the systems are already available on cloud. All that's required is pretty much to plug into these kind of environments and be able to derive certain benefits. These are composite platforms that that help you to simulate, to model, to collect information, and to visualize that kind of information. We have those kind of organizations in place. So they're already the front runners. What we've seen also in Africa, and specifically in the Southern Africa region, is companies that are already providing consultancy in this space. And I think this is a big part. As I said again, this space requires a high level of expertise, a high level of understanding, not only of technology, but the business as well. And we now need, across different countries, across multiple countries in Africa, to ask ourselves, do we have the expertise? Do we have people and partners who can walk with us the journey? And I think those are the critical questions that we are all asking ourselves. We have an idea what we want. We have an idea where we want to get to, but we need the hand holding. And that means we probably need partners in this space now, in the East African region, in the West African region, where we can actually have discussions around this area and thoughts about the execution of the same. So again, as I repeat, the technology is there, the expertise is definitely a challenge. We have, we are aware of companies that are already doing this. Some of them not necessarily in Africa. We are aware, for example, the Dangotes of this world are already, doing certain experiments, and that's around the oil and gas sector, and that's on the West African side. We know, for example, companies like Holcim have done certain elements of setting up digital plants, digital twin plants. These are pretty much real-time 3D virtual models of specific plants. We know, for example, in Singapore, one of the first countries that has a digital twin, built the whole country on a virtual platform. So we got multiple cases. Most of these, unfortunately, are out of the African continent. But I think we're at that point of execution. We're at that point of partnering with able companies that can help us roll out. We, of course, have had a lot of cases of discussions within the government and out of government. We know, for example, that in Kenya, there's been a discussion around, utilizing of digital twins in the wildlife space, where you can simulate natural environments. You can simulate the movement of animals. You can simulate the impact of weather, for example. You can simulate the impact of water or lack of, for example, and understand how systems can behave, what kind of technologies to deploy. So we have elements of that nature. We have governments that have looked at water, various assets like water, assets like power, for example. And these are opportunities that businesses and governments need to look at. If I think about the power side, for example, our power grid, and we see in an environment or in a continent where power is a major concern. One of the difficulties with managing power is having an aging infrastructure that you have to keep on sustaining, keep on upgrading over time. Now, if you simulate your power environment, your power infrastructure, your power grid, and be able to understand which areas of your power grid require urgent maintenance or pre-failure checks over time, where you need to carry out the investment. And these are because again, these are large-scale investments. They need capital-intensive investments. So you need to look at where do you build in efficiencies to enable you get that shilling, that dollar, that rand in the right place at the right time to allow you then to be able to put in and get the value and the benefit. That's very critical. So we've seen discussions around digital twinning in urban planning. We've seen in traffic management. That has been a discussion in Nairobi, right here. And while in theory we have the understanding, I think in practice, and getting that running is really what is a challenge to us. I think all I can say is we as technology experts in the African continent, I think it's important to understand one thing: understand the people, understand the government, understand our organizations, and then understand how then to adopt and bring on board technology. Ultimately, it's the people who drive technology. It's a CFO who signs the check to get this running. So we have to sit down again and push that narrative and value. And sometimes you've got to start small. And as I said again, I talked about a use case scenario. Make it probably a smaller use case scenario whose benefits and measure of results can easily happen. And once you do that, and you bring on board, and you have the same kind of alignment and thinking across a wider scope group of decision makers, then you're definitely heading into the right direction.